مساء الخير وشكرا لكم على دعوتنا إلى الديوانية. سأتحدثكم عن طريق الحج من الكوفة إلى مكة. أنا سأتكلم باللغة الإنجليزية وزميلي الدكتور جعفر سيترجم إلى اللغة العربية. Hello everyone. This presentation looks at a project I'm currently working on in southern Iraq with Rajwan Al-Mayali and the University of Al-Qadasiyah. It focuses on the protection, restoration and revitalization of the Darb Zubaydah pilgrim road that once linked Kufa and Baghdad with the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. The annual Islamic pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca is one of the 5 pillars of Islam and ranks among the most significant religious journeys in the world. For centuries before the advent of modern air travel, pilgrims travelled long distances by land and sea. The Hajj routes followed pre-Islamic trade paths, but gradually evolved to accommodate the specific needs of Islamic pilgrimage. Various routes emerged and flourished during different historical eras, adapting to the rise and fall of successive Islamic empires. This map from 1883 shows the routes of the pilgrim road from Kufa, running in red from north to south through the centre of the map, the caravans from Cairo, shown in pink on the left, from Damascus, shown in blue, and the caravan from Al-Ukhair on the Persian Gulf, running from west to east through the centre of the Arabian Peninsula. Pilgrims also arrived by caravan from Yemen in the south and by sea through the port of Jeddah. The Hajj route connecting Kufa and Baghdad to Mecca and Medina grew in importance during the first 100 years of the Abbasid Caliphate, from 750 to 850 CE, a period renowned as a golden age of Muslim civilization. This route became known as the Darb Zubaydah, in honour of Zubaydah bint Jafar, wife of the Abbasid Caliph Harun al-Rashid, recognising important enhancements made to infrastructure along the route under her patronage. Between Kufa and Mecca, the route stretches over a distance of 1,300 kilometres. The Abbasids originally constructed a series of 27 rest stops at intervals suited to the travelling speed of donkeys, horses and camels. An additional 27 intermediate stations were later added to cater for the increasing number of pedestrian pilgrims, while improvements were also made to the original 27 main stations. The new and enhanced infrastructure included a system of wells, cisterns and dams to provide water for travellers and their animals. Caravanserais, palaces and forts were constructed to improve the pilgrims' safety and comfort, and some stretches of the route were paved. A series of milestones and markers were installed, with the addition of lighthouses to guide pilgrims who often travelled at night to avoid the daytime heat. The Darb Zubaydah is now a transnational nomination for UNESCO World Heritage Site status, jointly submitted by the Republic of Iraq and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The section of the Darb Zubaydah located in present-day Iraq covers approximately 1/5 of the total length of the route. The 4 sites in Iraq from north to south are the stations at Qurun, Talhat, Sharaf and Al-Aqaba. The pilgrim station of Qurun is the first surviving rest stop on the Darb Zubaydah, heading south from Kufa towards Mecca. The station complex includes a square-shaped rest house, shown here in the top left, 2 cisterns, shown in the centre, and 2 square wells. You can see these in the right and in the upper centre between the rest stop and the cisterns. The rest house is now in a very fragile state, marked with graffiti and supported by wooden struts. The walls of the cisterns are still partially intact, and here we see the cistern with the rest house in the background. Although largely filled with sand, the cisterns are covered with vegetation that indicates more humid soil still present in contrast to the surrounding desert. Here we see the larger of the two wells, and when I filmed one of the soldiers dropping a large stone down this well, it took over 5 seconds to reach the bottom, which means it is over 100 meters deep. It seems, according to this primitive research method, that the wells are now dry, an indication of the falling water table in southern Iraq. This is the smaller of the two wells, and the wells at al-Qurun do not bear inscriptions like those seen on stones near the top of wells at nearby Talhat. al-Qurun includes a unique surviving example of a manara, or lighthouse, built to guide pilgrims travelling by night. The Manara al-Qurun, or Minaret of Horns, was built during the Seljuk era under Sultan Malik Shah. The Manara was mentioned by Ibn Jubair when he travelled along the Darb Zubaydah in around 1183 CE. He described a tower rising in a stretch of desert with no other buildings around it. It had a conical shape and was built of baked bricks decorated with gazelle horns, which made it appear like the back of a hedgehog. The Manara is, as described by Ibn Jubair, situated alone in the desert, around 1.3 kilometers from the rest station. Its separate location was possibly due to the need for sighting on higher ground, whereas the station complex needed to be located at a lower elevation for its wells and cisterns. At some point in the past, the Manara has collapsed and now consists of 2 main sections, a square foundation and a barrel-shaped section of the original tower. Being the closest surviving station on the Darb Zubaydah to the city of Najaf, the surviving architecture at al-Qurun, especially the Manara and rest house, has been vulnerable to intentional and unintentional damage. Both structures are now in an extremely vulnerable state and in need of greater protection and stabilization. One particularly concerning development is the construction of a modern tarmac road from Najaf along the route of the Darb Zubaydah. In addition to potentially disrupting important archaeology relating to the Hajj route, the road passes extremely close to the site of al-Qurun, even passing between the station complex and Manara. Groundworks associated with the road building have resulted in the digging of numerous ditches close to the Manara, and tracks left by bulldozers demonstrate how easily damage could be inflicted, even unintentionally, to this unique historical structure. The situation is complicated by the combination of control by both government and non-government entities in the region. Funding from ASOR, the American Society of Overseas Research, has allowed the project team to complete the following measures as a first phase of work at al-Qurun. Firstly, emergency protection around the Manara, including the erection of a fence and covering of the Manara structure to reduce further erosion and graffiti. Secondly, documentation through photography and drone filming of all structures at al-Qurun in their current state of preservation. And thirdly, community engagement with local stakeholders to increase awareness of the site's importance and need for greater protection. In addition to surveys to assess the options for stabilization and restoration of the structures at al-Qurun, the next stage of this project will also devise and undertake outreach initiatives among communities along the Darb Zubaydah route. These include visits and presentations to local schools and universities, community groups, and representatives of religious authorities. We'll also explore opportunities for involving local industry in subsequent phases of the project. The modern road out of Najaf that follows the route of the Darb Zubaydah towards al-Qurun is lined for several miles by brickworks. The giant kilns where the bricks are fired are so large that a lorry can be driven right inside for loading. It is hoped that these communities will be involved in providing building materials and expertise to allow the restoration of built heritage, such as the Menara and other infrastructure at Al-Qurun. We also plan to undertake surveys and documentation of intangible cultural heritage along the Darb Zubaydah route. The results should be incorporated into future development plans to ensure that sensitive, intangible heritage will be protected and enhanced alongside the physical heritage and archaeology of the Darb Zubaydah. I'd like to share this video I filmed on my iPhone of a camel herder at Talhat, the second major stop on the Darb Zubaydah heading south from Kufa. He uses this distinctive song to call the camels under his watch to follow him. When I showed this video to a young woman in Fade on the Darb Zubaydah route in Saudi Arabia, she immediately recognized it as identical to the sounds made by her grandfather, a Bedouin camel herder 500 kilometers to the south. Cuts to US aid and State Department programs by President Trump's administration have impacted human development and heritage projects in Iraq, and the status of the funding we had applied for to support our next phase of work on the Darb Zubaydah is currently uncertain. This means we have to look elsewhere for funding, potentially from neighbouring countries or from within Iraq itself. So, what are the opportunities and incentives for regional and local stakeholders? When I started working on heritage projects in Saudi Arabia back in 2010, the country's heritage was often neglected. Until the kingdom opened up to international visitors in 2019, there was little income to be generated from tourism, and historical places were often associated with a difficult past. The kingdom's heritage sites are now seen as one of the key attractions for both international and domestic tourists, and this has resulted in an ambitious program of restoration and revitalization. As with Saudi Arabia, Iraq needs to urgently diversify its economy away from complete dependency on oil. As a birthplace of one of the world's earliest and most important civilizations, there is great potential here for heritage tourism. There are, of course, already tens of millions of religious tourists coming to Iraq. The number of international tourists visiting Iraq for its archaeology and heritage is relatively small. This is largely due to the perceived security risks, and also because the infrastructure is not in place. The Darb Zubaydah could potentially attract visitors drawn by both its religious and historical importance, helping to support ongoing protection and revitalization. Private enterprise and organic development is important. Small grassroots projects can develop local expertise and create authentic experiences and products. I'd like to finish by looking briefly at the Saudi section of the Darb Zubaydah route. In February, I joined a group of 200 people walking a 90-kilometer stretch of the Darb Zubaydah near Ha'il in northern Saudi Arabia. Joining the walkers were cyclists, camels, horses, and even paragliders. This initiative raises the profile of the Darb Zubaydah, reconnects people with Islamic history, engages local communities along the route, and provides opportunities for local businesses. I gave a presentation to the group one evening about the work we're doing on the Darb Zubaydah in Iraq. Many of the group expressed the wish that one day it may be possible to travel once again along the Darb Zubaydah all the way from Kufa to Mecca. Thank you.